Starting to look ahead for week 11 of the fantasy football season. We're going to give you some sneaky waiver wire ads for the week ahead. I'm Nick Whalen. He's Jeff Erickson. Let's get into it, Jeff. We'll start as we always do at the quarterback position. Not a ton of exciting options out there this week. We got the usuals: Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett, still available in plenty of casual leagues. Dare I say, maybe this is a week you could use Geno Smith if you have to. He at least gets that Dallas defense.
Dare I tell you? Although, I mean, Dallas is a total wild card right now. They trade for Quinnen Williams. Obviously, the tragic passing of one of their teammates last week. They actually showed a semblance of a pass rush in that Monday night loss in Week 9 to Arizona at the end of that game, and a pass rush against Geno is something that would be tough to maintain any sort of offense with. So you could go that route. I think another route is Aaron Rodgers. He plays the Bengals. Four touchdown passes against the Bengals last time out, and I don't see any reason to believe that the Bengals defense has improved. In fact, it may have somehow possibly regressed since then, coming off the bye week. We'll see about that. The Steelers themselves offensively regressed on Sunday night, but I think that's an option for streaming. I think this is also a good opportunity to open the door about discussing whether we should be stashing Joe Burrow right now with this practice window opening today.
Look, I think if you have the roster space, you should probably do it, right? I don't see any reason why, Joe Burrow can't do what Joe Flacco has been doing, which is, been a very capable starting fantasy quarterback every single week. What would worry me here is he is coming off a toe injury. There's probably a decent amount of rust. We've seen Joe Burrow start slowly to begin seasons. At that point in the year, if we're talking about throwing him out there for week 14, you're in the thick of it. It might be the fantasy playoffs in your league. You can't really afford any sort of letdown performance there. So that's what would be in the back of my mind. I also think we could fast forward 3 weeks from now and the Bengals could lose 3 more games in a row. And maybe we don't end up seeing Joe Burrow at all. At that point, what's the merit of throwing him out there for a few 3 or 4 games at the end of a lost season? But in a deeper league, yeah, he's somebody I would consider. There's some leagues where I'm basically streaming quarterback every single week, and having Joe Burrow as an option coming to, save the season late in the year, it's appealing.
Yeah, it is. How about running back? I know we were talking beforehand, struggling to find names this week at running back. News that Bucky Irving is not going to play for Tampa Bay yet again this week. Sean Tucker's been actually sometimes more effective, and he's kind of a goal line guy. Maybe you take a flyer on him.
Yeah, he's kind of the only non-handcuff who I have on my list. And even Sean Tucker is somewhat of a handcuff to Rachaad White, who I guess is technically the RB1, assuming Bucky Irving misses more time, which seems likely at this point. He split carries pretty much evenly with Rachaad White this past week. Really tough matchup against that Patriots run defense. And Sean Tucker was definitely the more effective runner. I still think Rachaad White is the guy I would rather roster just because there is going to be some pass catching upside. We haven't really seen this running game get going since Bucky Irving went down, but yeah, I mean, the available options at running back are just brutal this week. Everyone else on my list is Blake Corum, Brian Robinson, Devin Neal, Kenneth Gainwell, again, targeting that Cincinnati defense. But for the most part, it's guys who, they need an injury, they need a role change before they become fantasy viable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll throw a couple names on there. Mr. 1/3 himself, Tyler Algier.
Oh yeah.
Always money in the banana stand. He's always useful enough in a bye week situation there. So you could go that route. If you're really in a crazy deep league and you're desperate, maybe take a gander at Taj Brooks in Cincinnati. Samaje Perine had a high ankle sprain a week ago in the loss to the Bears. Yep. So if there's a change of pace guy for Chase Brown against the Steelers, and remember the Bengals ran effectively against the Steelers three or 4 weeks ago, Brooks might be that guy. But again, this is a break glass in case of emergency only situation here.
Yeah, this is as barren as I think it's been all year at running back. I would mention Amari DiMercado as well. You got the Bam Knight situation there. At some point, they'll be healthier in the backfield with Trey Benson coming back. So I would stay away from that situation overall. Bottom line, hopefully you don't need a running back this week because there's not a whole lot out there. Luckily, we only have 2 teams on bye, I suppose. It's the New Orleans Saints who, you're really only missing Olave, I guess Alvin Kamara, but we do have the Colts on bye. And that means, no Jonathan Taylor. You're without the receivers. You're without Tyler Warren. So that's the big one to monitor. Let's move on to receiver, Jeff. Who do you have there?
Similarly, not too many guys I'm so excited about.
Right.
We're not going to have Chris Godwin again in Tampa Bay, so Tez Johnson could be of use. He doesn't get a huge volume, but at least he does, seem to get a decent number of red zone looks. So I don't really love going at Buffalo the week after Buffalo just got pantsed by Miami. I think Buffalo's defense is going to bounce right back this week. So I think this is going to be probably a bad spot for him. Christian Watson is the Tyler Algier of wide receivers. Seemingly always a third rostered. Could be a decent pickup. If you're desperate, Tyler Lockett seems like he's catching Geno Smith's attention, and he gets Dallas this week.
You took mine, man. I was excited to talk about Tyler Lockett.
Okay, so you're excited, not desperate. Let's go.
Both. But he is playing the Dallas Cowboys. That's what ultimately matters here. First and foremost, check for Trey Tucker. He's still available in about 60% of ESPN leagues. So not a sneaky ad, but somebody who could be out there in your league. Dante Thornton, Jack Besh, those guys are going to be in the mix. Thornton actually led the Raiders in snaps in that back and forth explosive game against Denver on Thursday night. But Lockett ended up leading the team in routes. He led the team in targets with 6. And again, the Raiders play the Cowboys. If they were not playing the Cowboys or maybe the Bengals, we would not be having this discussion. But that's the reason that he should be on the radar. We got Matt Collins. We have officially reached I guess I'm going to pick up Matt Collins portion of the season, which feels like it arrives every single year. Keyshawn Butte, of course, out this past week. Collins led the Pats in snaps, routes, targets at 10 of them, caught 6 of those for 106. You could maybe look into Kyle Williams. He's kind of the splashy guy, had the 72-yard touchdown, but was only targeted twice in that game. And, maybe if you can wait and see on Keyshawn Butte. It doesn't look like a long-term injury. I know he didn't practice last week, but I think there is a chance he could be back. Although Patriots do play Thursday night against the Jets. Other names on my list would be Jaden Higgins for the Houston Texans. Volume has been all over the place, but he has an 8 and a 7 target catch game over the last 3 weeks. Caught a touchdown on Sunday, and he was second among Texans receivers behind Nico Collins in terms of targets, in terms of routes, some of those kind of deeper things that you look at. Am I allowed, Jeff, to be even just a little bit excited about A.D. Mitchell after the Jets threw the ball 11 times this past week?
I saw some big bids this past week on A.D. Mitchell. After the trade deadline, we actually saw, I saw some, some, like in the NFFC, I saw some pretty big bids on him. Places where his deeper leagues like, hey, this could be a game changer. It could be, but I don't even know who's going to be the quarterback this upcoming week. So it's difficult to do that. I had a couple other names in mind here too, and they're both on the Bears. Olamide Zaccheaus and Luther Burden. DJ Moore had the shoulder injury. Zaccheaus is already getting a decent number of targets anyhow. I don't love the matchup against the Vikings, especially on the road, but I think if you're looking for a floor of like 6 or 7 targets, Zaccheaus might be that guy.
Yeah, and I don't know if the Bears are going to be able to run as effectively on Minnesota, so it could be another high-volume spot for that passing game. A lot of drops this past week for the Bears, and Luther Burden, I thought, actually had one really nice catch over the middle, so we've kind of been waiting on him to get out there a little bit more. Maybe that does happen this week. I think that's all I have at wide receiver. A lot of wish casting across the board in sneaky ads this week, but let's move on to tight end. Where do you want to start there?
Well, while we're wishing upon a star, why not go back to Pittsburgh? Last time the Bengals faced the Steelers, they allowed 4 tight end touchdowns. All 4 tight ends have a reasonable amount of availability. Yep. I'd start with Pat Freiermuth, who has a long-term history of success against the Bengals, and 2, of course, in that last game against each other. And then, hey, check to see if Washington's available or Jonnu Smith, because I think those guys would be of use as well.
Yeah, this is the matchup for it. I don't think we get, 4 tight end touchdowns again this week. It's very possible. It is the Bengals defense. Anything is possible against that defense.
Yes.
How about Noah Fant on the other side of that game?
Sure.
Bengals coming out of a bye. Pittsburgh is nowhere near Cincinnati level defensively, but they are a bottom 5 defense against tight ends. 2 touchdowns in the last 3 for Noah Fant, including one in that Pittsburgh game. I think, unfortunately, we have to talk about the Chargers here, Jeff, because Oronde Gadsden, went out with a knee injury last night, undergoing an MRI as we record this on Monday. No results quite yet. Would not be surprised if this is something that costs him multiple weeks, if not the rest of the season. So Tucker Fisk and Tyler Conklin are currently your backup options for the Chargers. Will Dissly a healthy scratch on Sunday night?
Conklin, I guess, would be a desperation play. I will make one last plea. Colson Loveland is like 46% rostered in leagues right now. He took over late in that game, and I just think this is a genie out of the bottle moment here for the Bears with Loveland. Dude, they obviously like him. They spent a first-round pick on him. So as he gets more and more reps, Kmet's still the better blocker, and that's why he loses snap share. But we saw, when the Bears had to come back, Caleb Williams loved targeting Loveland. So I think this is one of those things where you can't unsee that. So in thinner leagues, go get them. This could be still another good week.
Yeah, I like that one. I'll run through just a couple other names here. I mean, again, it is the Jets. They did throw the ball 11 times last week. Mason Taylor, it's going to be rough, but he's still playing a ton. He's running a lot of routes. He's not seeing a lot of work. But Garrett Wilson did re-injure his knee in that win over the Browns. So in theory, that should free up some amount of targets, but tough matchup coming up against New England on Thursday. I think you can look at Michael Mayer for the Raiders, 4 targets on 37 snaps a week ago. Raiders plenty comfortable using 2 tight ends, and obviously Jacoby Myers now out of the picture for the rest of the year. And then Tyler Higbee for the Rams. I mean, the Rams passing game is just unstoppable right now. I mean, they are running into a really good defense in Seattle, but this is a team that is rolling out a ton of 13 personnel. They're using 3 different tight ends. All of them seem to be making plays every week. Higbee is the guy of that group that I'd be the most comfortable with. And, Devontae Adams, keep an eye on him this week, picked up an oblique injury on Sunday. So if they were to be without Devontae Adams, I think that pushes a little bit more of that passing game onto the tight ends. And then lastly, Jeff, a couple guys to monitor on IR. Darren Waller, he's eligible to return in week 13. And Brenton Strange, who technically can return this week. I would be surprised if that happens, but his 21-day window is open. So Jags will be playing for something down the stretch. I think Brenton Strange will be involved.
Yep. Both those names seem like they're perpetually there as names that to watch for there, but just to tease us and hurt us after they score a touchdown on our bench, and then we turn around and start them the next week and they do nothing. But you never know. You still need to find something there. So absolutely a pathway there. Yeah. All right. That's all I got this week, Nick. Anything else on the way out?
No, I guess the one name on my list, Jeff, we did not mention is that Russell Wilson may be starting for the Giants. We should at least acknowledge that. I'm not saying I would go pick him up. It's a bad matchup on paper against the Green Bay Packers. They just fired their head coach. A lot of things going on right now with the Giants, but if you're in a super flex league and you're super desperate for a quarterback, it could be Russell Wilson. I don't know. Maybe it'll be Jameis Winston, but Jackson Dart in concussion protocol, and decent chance, I would say, that he misses week 11. So we will end on that fitting note, I think, given the names that we just talked about for the last 10 minutes. Those have been your sneaky ads ahead of week 11. Go check out everything we offer over at RotoWire. You can see the code right there. Check out the description below. YouTube 15, YOUTUBE 15. YouTube 15, put that in at RotoWire, 15% off everything we offer.